We finally have organized Eagles football. The preseason is here. We got our first look at what the team is going to look like, not the starters, because we don't want to put our $250 million quarterback out there in a meaningless preseason game. Although, Shane, I will say, if Harbaugh was playing that game to win, and on that 2-point conversion, I would have put Jalen out there. I would have thought about it. Go on, if I know Sirianni really wanted to win that game, and I was like, yo, I'm sure he thought about it at some point ending this streak. And I would have thought about it. I would have thought about putting him out there on the 2-point conversion. If Harbaugh wants to be a tryhard, I'm sure Sirianni could have been too. How do you feel about that? I would have thrown Jalen out there. I would have put him out there for that 2-point conversion.
Can you imagine?
Yes, I could. I was imagining it all night.
just imagine that. There's how much time was left? There was still 7 minutes left.
Yeah, it was like 7.
Just imagine that you send in Jason Kelsey, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, and Jalen Hurts for a tush-push 2-point conversion.
AJ Brown behind him, shoving him.
Yeah, and then you just pull him back out of the game. That'd be kind of funny.
That's on brand for Sirianni, though. That's something Sirianni would 100% do. That's so on brand for him. But we finally got a good look at the team and some of the position battles, depth chart things, and what the offense might seemingly look like in the regular season. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of the EPA Podcast, brought to you by Bleeding Green Nation. I'm one of your hosts today, Victor Williams. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook. Not Facebook, Twitter /X, whatever we're going to call it these days. TikTok, all that fun stuff at the Philly Pod. Do the same for my co-host here, Shane Haff. You can follow him on everything at Shane Haff NFL. Shane, is there any all 22 out on the preseason game? Did you break down all of the 2 snaps that Jalen Carter played over the weekend?
I did not. I started to record clips for a Tanner McKee passing game review, and then I was like, nah. I mean, it was yesterday. I was like, by the time I get it out, it's going to be Wednesday night, and then there's a game Thursday. Nobody's going to watch that. So we actually get a week between games. I'm not promising anything, but I might break out just a short all 22 after Thursday's game just to get back, get my preseason in, get back into all 22 shape.
Yeah, the extent of my video content was all of Tanner McKee's big completions, the 5 or 6 of them that he had, and I just clipped all those together and put it out. And I was like, that's enough. That's all I can do from this game. Although Sidney Brown had a lot of plays you probably could have put together from this. Eli Ricks, I'm sure there's some good Eli Ricks film out there on what he put out on preseason. But yeah, Tanner McKee was kind of the story. Well, not the story, but obviously it was Jalen Carter. But as far as people who got significant playing time, Tanner McKee was one of the names that was discussed throughout the week. We'll talk about some of the offensive players later on, but of course, the name, household name right there is Jalen Carter. Every time you open any type of form of social media, is some news about Jalen Carter, what he's doing in training camp, or you'll see the viral clip of him on his first snap with the Philadelphia Eagles in preseason, getting after. It was Tyler Huntley, right? Was he in there? Tyler Huntley?
No. It was.
Or who was
no. They started Josh.
Did they start with Josh Johnson? Yeah.
And then they put Tyler Huntley in against the third stringers to make sure they could bring home the W.
Yeah, Pro Bowler, right? Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley to secure the win against Ian Book, who played it felt like he played the whole second half, and he finished 1 for 4 for 11 yards. So that was.
He dropped back to pass 11 times and completed 1 pass.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and he lost 21 yards.
Speaking of Ian Book and video content, so I tweet clips during the game all the time. I have the game up on my phone, screen recording, so I can tweet out big clips because people look for replays. The broadcast doesn't show and stuff. And the one where Tyler Huntley took a 20 yards, Ian Book took a 20-yard sack, spinning around and stuff. I tweeted that clip out and I said, did the Eagles sign Carson Wentz again? And I missed it. And you wouldn't believe how many Carson Wentz fans came after me in the comments. I didn't realize that defending Carson Wentz in 2023 was something we were still doing on Twitter, on X, whatever it is. But that contingent of the fan base apparently still exists. So
yeah, there's a select few. We were having the conversation outside separately a few days ago about driving engagement for X, and if we want to become those accounts. Yeah, you're trying. Was that testing the fire of driving engagement? What was your thought process when you were typing out Carson Wentz? Something had to cross your mind.
I really just thought it would be funny because he routinely would make 2 guys miss for a sack, but then not throw the ball away and take a 20-yard sack. So it's Ian Book was doing the same thing. He had the wheels, avoided the sack, and still just took a huge negative play. So it's just what popped into my head, and I thought it was kind of funny. I never expected for people to be telling me that Carson Wentz was a good quarterback and you should respect his name and all that stuff. I didn't think that was something we were going to do.
You haven't heard? We don't have a Super Bowl without him. That's what you could say.
I mean, that's true, but
Ian Book didn't even make people miss. He just ran backwards for 20 yards and took the sack. He didn't even make people miss. But I hope we all know how that competition is going to square out now. We'll talk about that later on. But yes, Jay, I do remember Josh Johnson now because I remember tweeting after that sack that Josh Johnson has to be entirely sick of the Eagles by now. He just saw them in the NFC Championship game. Hassan Reddick speared him into the ground. He flat out just missed like a ball and lost a fumble. And now in his first action of the following season, he's just staring at Jalen Carter in the face and on the ground. Once again, if somebody out there doesn't hate the Eagles more than 49ers, it's probably Josh Johnson as of right now. So Shane, like I said, probably not breaking down all 22 film on Jalen Carter's lone few reps that he got in this game. But you also hear the stuff coming out of training camp. I've talked to some of the guys who have been there and saying what he looks like. And we've heard from the players what he's sounding, but he is looking very much the part of the top defensive pick in the draft that we all thought he would be coming out of Cleveland Browns joint practice. 2 sacks, fumble recovery, tackles for loss. He's getting pressure, QB hits, all of the sort, well, quote unquote QB hits, can't really hit them and all that stuff. So what do you make of Jalen Carter, what you saw from him in the preseason game, as well as everything we're hearing coming out of a training camp? Are you tempering or what is it? Tempering your expectations, or are you like, I want to see this guy week 1 and watch him wreck defenses?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's hard not to be excited. He comes out and that first snap just dominates Ben Cleveland. And then he played 1 snap the rest of the game. It's like the Eagles put him out there in that first snap and they're like, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and put you in bubble wrap. You're good for the regular season now.
I saw what I had to see.
Yeah, so I loved seeing that. I've been going through an exercise ranking my top 10 players at each position and putting it out on X. And you see that? I called it X.
On X, time. Yeah. It doesn't even sound right, does it?
It doesn't. I hate it. I'm going to go back to Twitter. But I've been putting them out on Twitter, and I've gone through the entire offense. I posted my edge rushers yesterday, and you wouldn't believe people were upset about my edge rusher rankings. They haven't cared about any of the rest of them. But my number 2 rated offensive guard was Joel Bitonio, the guard for the Browns. And Jalen Carter has got the best of him sometimes in camp and in these joint practices as well. So I know the impact that rookie defensive tackles typically have. I'm trying to talk myself out of thinking Jalen Carter is just going to dominate. I think I gave this stat on here a little while back, but that since in the last 10 years, first-round rookie defensive tackles have averaged like 2.3 sacks in the rookie season. And the only guy to get more than 4.5 sacks was Aaron Donald. So you can be a really disruptive player without getting a lot of sacks, but I'm trying to tell myself that he's not going to be the next Aaron Donald. And sometimes I don't succeed. So that first rep, that doesn't do anything helping talk me off of that ledge.
Yeah, not at all. And obviously there's a lack of like game planning in certain things, and teams don't know how much certain players are going to play. And we assume week 1 against New England, they're going to do something to try and mitigate and neutralize the Eagles' defensive line. But that is very encouraging signs when you see the first ever rep and he's blowing past guys and getting after quarterbacks and causing Josh Johnson to throw balls away. It's very encouraging signs there. Also hearing what he's doing in joint training camp. There's people, I've had people, I've had Chicago fans and Atlanta fans in my mentions very upset that the team, I don't think they were upset at the time, but now apparently a few months later, they're very upset that the team passed on Jalen Carter based on what's coming out of camp. They're saying Bijan better be generational. They're saying, I can't believe Chicago passed on him. We all thought that he potentially could go there. So Atlanta and Chicago fans are already very upset that Jalen Carter is not with their team. So good stuff. So
Bijan can be generational, and it's still inexcusable to take him with a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I was for those of you that were listening to this during the draft portion of the season, I wasn't leading the Bijan train, but I was on it. I was definitely on it. I was like, I'm convinced to add him to the offense, and I don't know who's stopping it. But you build through the trenches. Jalen Carter looks like he's going to be a foundational piece, and we can't wait to see what he does in the regular season. The other Georgia Bulldog that got picked was Nolan Smith. I saw some. I didn't get. I think I might have walked away for his rep, and I come back to Twitter X, whatever, and I see some people that Nolan Smith's looking lost out there. He definitely looks rusty. And then he has this one play where he dips under the shoulder, or dipped the shoulder rather under the offensive lineman and got to the quarterback for a QB hit. So definitely ups and downs as far as Nolan Smith is concerned. A lot of people were saying, I don't know what you saw, Shane. You probably have a more detailed perception of it than I do. But what did you make of Nolan Smith? Did he look rusty? Did he look lost? Does he look like he has to get his legs underneath him? Or was it about status quo for what you expected from him at this point?
Yeah, the two big reps that stuck out for him is the one you mentioned, rushing against the left tackle. He dipped the shoulder and got right around him. Would have been a sack if it wasn't just a 3-step drop and ball out. So that one was a really good pressure. And then he had a really bad rep on the right side in run defense. It was a run going to the left, and he's the contained guy. And he got a little too amped up to go chase the play to the play side and lost contain. And that's the one where the running back cut it back and got a big gain. So that one was pretty much entirely, I think it was Justice Hill, 37-yard run. That one was entirely on him. But at least, and it's not excusable, but he's a rookie, at least it was a mistake of over effort, not a mistake of being lackadaisical or missing a tackle. So I'll at least give him that. I'm sure that's a coaching point. That's not something that you're going to see. He was a good run defender in college, probably just a little amped up in a preseason game. But those were the two biggest reps that stuck out with Nolan Smith. I would like to see him some more, though. I want to see a lot more film on him.
Yeah. I think he will get some more playing time as the games, especially tomorrow. And in the last game, I would expect to see him get some more reps there. But I like especially that one rep. That should be encouraging. Fran Duffy has a good breakdown of it on Twitter for those of you who want to get a more in-depth look at that and what he's done with his hands and how that is going to translate to the NFL. Speaking of guys with a lot of effort, Sidney Brown, who plays like you shot him out of a rocket, runs around like his head is cut off essentially. So he's going to be one of those guys that either hits you so hard that knocks you out of the game, or he just completely whiffs and misses the tackle entirely. That's the notion I'm getting for Sidney Brown. I've said numerous times that he's my favorite player in this draft. I like safeties. I like guys that can run downhill and hit guys. And Sidney Brown was on the record saying that he wants to be a feared player, and he's going into his rookie year with that mentality. 9 tackles. He was seemingly all over the place. And those are good signs you want to see from the rookie. And it looks like the Eagles are moving him up the depth chart fairly quickly. He's already getting first team reps following that playoff game or that preseason game as well. So Shane, your thoughts on Sidney Brown, what you saw from him? He seems to have the mentality. He seems to be exemplifying everything that the Eagles said about him when they named him as a Red Star prospect throughout the throughout the draft process. So Sidney Brown, is he starting week 1? What do you make of his? I think Terrell Edmonds was got more playing time than Sidney Brown. So that has to tell you, I haven't seen the snap counts, but that should tell you what they think of Sidney Brown to this point. I know Edmonds was in there for a substantial part of the game, and Reed Blankenship didn't even dress. So Reed Blankenship is a seasoned vet at this point, doesn't even need to play.
Actually, Brown actually ended up playing more than Edmonds. It's a little more than you thought, but I liked what I saw from Brown. It was about 50-50 on his snaps from a deep alignment versus in the box, and that speaks to the versatility he's got. And he's going to fly around, like you said, plays like he's shot out of a rocket. He's going to hit you hard. He's going to whiff sometimes. We saw that too.
Or miss entirely.
Yeah, but he does bring a little bit of like that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson swagger to the safety position, where the Eagles haven't had that really beyond, much before Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I mean, Malcolm Jenkins, longtime player for the Eagles, really good player, moved around. He was kind of a central piece of the defense, but he didn't kind of have like that swagger that so much, if you know what I mean. And that's not to say, I mean, he was an elite player, and his hit on Brandon Cooks in the Super Bowl was legendary, but
he was more of like a vocal, like adult leader than he wasn't like the talk shit.
That's a great way to say it. He was the adult in the room, whereas
he was the mature one.
Sidney Brown, they're not. They're that run around with your hair on fire and make plays. And I liked it. I liked what I saw. Kevon Wallace also played pretty well, surprisingly.
Right.
Now, he played a lot more like deep or in the slot than he did into the box. So maybe they're going to do some things where they use Sidney Brown as like the third safety, but when he comes in, they drop Wallace into the slot or Brown is into the box. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but I do think you're going to see plenty of all of those guys. Maybe not Terrell Edmonds as much, I hope, but he's the guy. It's not an anti-Terrell Edmonds take. He's just the guy I'm least interested in the safety group.
Yeah, lowest ceiling, but good floor, but the lowest ceiling of everybody there is how I kind of view the safety room. Kayvon, yeah, we spoke about him last pod that maybe he's the guy that just took a few seasons to put it all together. He came out of the draft with sort of lofty expectations. The Clemson, everybody, we're dying to see somebody kind of be the heir to Brian Dawkins. So the minute somebody comes out of Clemson and he looks like he can maybe hit hard, it's, oh my God, he's Brian Dawkins. And then that wasn't entirely fair to Kayvon Wallace. So good to see him kind of putting it all together. And yeah, I mentioned Reed Blankenship, who's had now three picks on Deshaun Watson in the last 2 days in practice. Doesn't even have to show anything in preseason. The Eagles have their minds made up that he looks like he is going to be the starter. So your thoughts on Reed Blankenship in his second season as an undrafted free agent? Now, mind you, he did play 5 years at Middle Tennessee, so it's not like he doesn't have experience. That's probably one of the reasons why he was able to translate to the NFL so quickly. He has 5 years of at his school. But now that he has his 1 year and he's doing everything, he's having a really solid camp. Are you okay with Reed not having to show anything in preseason? Is he one of your solidified starters at safety? Because the Eagles certainly believe that's the case.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
has he earned it? Actually, is a better way to phrase that.
Yeah, it was limited reps that we saw him on the field last year, but he looked good in those reps, and he's apparently been doing really well in training camp. Mm-hmm. He's intercepted Deshaun Watson 3 times in the last 2 days, like you said. Although, let's call a spade a spade. Deshaun Watson was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL last year. So maybe Deshaun Watson is just not very good anymore too. I don't know, but I think he's for sure locked in as one of your guys. And between Edmonds, who you said is high floor, low ceiling, maybe, and you've got Sidney Brown and you've got Kayvon Wallace, maybe the safety group's not as worrisome as we thought. I mean, it's young guys, but you look at a team like the Chiefs last year. Once you start paying your quarterback, your offensive stars, you need young guys on the defense that can come in and contribute right away. And maybe it doesn't look fantastic in September, but you hope by the time you get to December and January, they're firing on all cylinders. And so I have more confidence in the safety group now than I did. I have a lot of confidence in the cornerback group and the depth at cornerback. That's something that was paper thin last year, and I don't think it is this year. But if I'm being honest, I'm still really worried about linebacker.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm not nearly as worried about safety as I am about linebacker. Zach Cunningham did tip one of those passes that led to a Reed interception. So maybe Reed is going to be a beneficiary of some of these Chauncey Gardner-Johnson interceptions. But this is why I thought Sidney Brown was such a good pick, because he had 10 interceptions in college, and they want to kind of, replace that turnover production that CJ did provide. And I think Sidney Brown was a good way to do that, as long as he continues to develop at the pace that he appears to be on. You mentioned cornerbacks. For the first time in a long time, like you said, there is depth there and a lot of young guys. I remember heading into last year's draft, or this past draft, I was like, we really need some young talent in here. That's why I was big on Witherspoon, potentially investing a first-round pick there or what have you. And the Eagles have come out looking pretty good. Obviously, Slay and Bradbury are your top 2 guys. You have Avonte Maddox. Can he stay healthy? Zach McPherson has transitioned as the backup nickel now because there's too much competition on the outside. So, Zach, now it's up to you to man that nickel spot, and he's looked all right there to this point. And then everybody behind him is Josh Jobe. Here's my take. I'm a Greedy Williams fan, but the way I see the depth chart kind of shaking out, I'm not entirely sure if he makes his roster. Like the way I see it, it's probably Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, McPherson, Keely Ringo, obviously you keep him, and Josh Jobe, and then you stash like Josiah Scott, who you've had to play as a starter last year, regrettably, and Eli Ricks, who we'll talk about in a second. Is there any space for Greedy Williams at all? Is there Mario Goodrich, who's a good player? They have a lot of depth there, but I don't think there's any room for Greedy Williams, and that's a shame for a guy who's had a lot of experience in this league, and I thought could kind of rejuvenate his career here. I just don't know if the opportunity is there. He wasn't good in that first preseason game, Greedy. He allowed that player to get out of bounds and let Justin Tucker hit that field goal, right? Yeah, I'm sure that's being circled and filmed by Sirianni.
Yeah, I think there's very little shot that Greedy Williams makes the roster for kind of the reasons you enumerated. I think you're 6 deep if you count, Jobe, Ringo, and McPherson. I think those guys are all near locks. Mm-hmm. I don't think you're going to keep 7 cornerbacks.
Yeah, it'd be a tough stretch.
It's going to be Eli Ricks or Mario Goodrich. It's probably not going to be Greedy Williams. And
even Josiah Scott is above Greedy at this point. Well, I mean, I base that because he had to play him last year. I don't know what he's done this summer so far.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to rush to sign Josiah Scott. You could probably practice squad him if you wanted to. But that play was a huge mistake by Greedy Williams, and I highlighted that one on the post-game show. Split by my power going out right as I started to talk about it. So 5 minutes later, when I got back in the stream, I finished talking about it. But that's just a mistake a veteran player can't make. There's no timeout. You rally and tackle. You don't go for a big hit or a pass breakup. You want them to complete that pass in bounds. And you heard me kind of excuse Nolan Smith's losing contain mistake and saying he's a rookie, overexcited, whatever. Greedy Williams is a vet. You can't make those mistakes. And he did. And I think there's a reason he was in there that late in the game. I think he's pretty low in the pecking order among cornerbacks here.
Yeah, it's tough. And even with Eli Ricks, do you risk having him on the practice squad, because he had a very good game, and the pick 6 obviously inflates a lot of the stuff. But 4 targets, only 1 reception allowed for 7 yards, 2 pass breakups, and the pick 6, a 0 passer rating allowed when targeted. One of the highest PFF, or the highest graded defenders as far as PFF goes, for those of you that put stock into how BFF grades their players. Do we risk putting Eli Ricks on the practice squad? Do you think after what he showed, at least to this point in preseason, somebody's going to sign him off of there? Or do you roster him? 7 cornerbacks is going to be tough. It's definitely tough. But do the Eagles roster 7 in case one of these older corners go down? You have Slay and Bradbury. We're a broken record at this point with the age of these guys. But one of them goes down, you want the depth. In case Job comes in, he doesn't look good. Okay, throw Ricks in there. Maybe he can be a little better. What are the chances Eli Ricks kind of sticks after his preseason performance? Do you run the risk of another team grabbing him off the practice squad? Can you grab UDFAs off the practice squad? Is that a rule? Can you not do that?
No, you can.
I was about to say,
squad, you can take. I don't know. It depends on how the rest of the preseason goes for him. Probably, maybe the Eagles tell him to trip and fall down and give up a 70-yard touchdown.
They can do what they did the Devin out non-injury football list or non-football injury list.
Yeah. The problem, you can always do like phantom IR. The problem there is if they're not on your 53 when the season starts, they stay on IR all year and they can't practice. So that's not ideal. So guys that are hurt that are gonna be on IR, you have to get them on your 53 and then move them to IR. And so, of course, Eli Ricks could always just refuse to sign somewhere else too if the Eagles were like, "Hey, we really like you. We don't have the space, but."
Players have a say. I didn't know that. Players have a say when they sign people off practice squads. You can just say no. I wasn't aware.
Yeah, it's not very common because
I thought they could just snatch them and say
active roster. But yeah, you can pay. I mean, your practice squad players are on a contract; they get paid. They just can break the contract to go sign to an active roster somewhere. And if a team comes calling, you can say no. You can not sign it. So.
But you figure you're getting a chance to play, so most people don't say no. To your point,
right? So yeah, Darius Slay needs to take Eli Ricks under his wing and be like, "Hey, listen,
don't go anywhere.
I'm old and I'm going to retire in 2 years, so you need to stick around here and be my successor or something like that." But I don't know how the cornerback logjam plays out. We'll wait to see. Maybe the Eagles carry like one linebacker because nobody else is worth signing, so they can get them on, and then they can sign practice squatters to linebacker spots or something. Who knows?
Yeah, it sounds like James Bradbury was in like a in the box line. I saw a tweet yesterday saying that that Bradbury was in like a hybrid linebacker role. Like, is that I don't think that should be a thing. Is that true? Did you see that? Because
I hadn't seen that. No.
Yeah, I don't know what the what the deal is there. Maybe they're just getting cute like they do when they put AJ Brown in punt returning stuff. Speaking of linebacker, Sean Bradley suffered a season-ending Achilles injury. One of the I would consider him a fan favorite because he's a local kid, Temple, making a name for himself. Been here a few years. How big of a loss is that? We would consider him a special teams ace on this front. How much does special teams already struggles as it is? How much of a blow is it that the Eagles are losing a guy like Sean Bradley, especially with the linebacker depth looking the way it is? I don't know how much defensive snaps he was going to get, but I think it's certainly a hit to the special team.
Yeah. It's not ideal, but by the same token, if you're going to lose a guy for the season, you'd rather it just be a special teams player because it's going to be limited impact. The impact of special teams is becoming less and less in the NFL as they incentivize fair catching kickoffs. And I mean, punts are always going to be a thing, but I don't think he was going to be getting snaps in the defense. He was just going to be kind of your special teams ace. And if you had to pick a place to lose somebody, you probably like to just lose the special teams ace. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it obviously sucks for Sean Bradley, and hopefully he's got a speedy recovery and back next year. But it's probably one of the least impactful injuries of a guy that would have made the 53 that the Eagles could have.
Certainly is the case. Yeah. Speaking of injuries, this will be our last point before we go to break here. Hassan Reddick dealing with a thumb injury, sat out of practice yesterday. This is now a second injury of camp after dealing with a groin issue earlier in the summer. Some people on Twitter were suggesting, "Hey, is he really hurt, or is this like one of those contract injuries?" I don't think Hassan Reddick rolls that way. I'm pretty sure he wants to be out there and play. Should we be concerned about Hassan Reddick's numerous minor injuries this summer? Is he playing? Is he playing the contract card? Like I'm gonna just conveniently sit out and maybe my deal gets reworked. I don't think that's the case, but it's funny that fans are thinking like that. What's your read on the situation with Hassan Reddick? I don't think it was. I don't think the contract situation was a situation until a reporter, I forget who asked him, literally asked him, "Hey, you're like a top 20 paid edge rusher right now, and your production you should probably get paid more. How do you feel about that?" So I don't think it was an issue until people made it one. But if Hassan Reddick isn't making it an issue, I guess it's not one. But it's out there now. What's your read on the entire thing?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that it's got anything.
Yeah,
to
I don't
do
think
with
it is either.
contract stuff.
You know?
He just signed a 3-year deal last year, so he's 1 year into it.
Right.
So I don't think that's probably it. Teams are really hesitant, or not hesitant. They're really cautious in training camp preseason with injuries, especially for star players. And I mean, does Hassan Reddick need
No, he doesn't.
training camp reps? And you got so many guys behind him that do. I think it's, hey, you kind of banged your thumb a little bit. How about you just sit out for a couple of days? So I don't think I think it's an abundance of caution, and there's so much depth behind him that they're trying to get a look at.
Yeah, right. Was it you just brought up the depth behind edge rusher. Derek Barnett, who did he shove? He shoved somebody last week. I forget who it was, but he was in a scrum last week. Are we still doing this thing are we still doing the Derek Barnett thing this year? When is it the last straw with this guy?
He had a penalty. I can't remember what it was because I tweeted out that it's always him.
Oh my god.
Thing.
Yeah,
but then I remember there when Joel Bitonio said that there were some cheap shots happening at practice yesterday. I quote tweeted that, and I was like, "Derek Barnett, is that you?"
Yeah,
that's just who I assume it is at this point.
I saw we're not going to dive too deep into this end of it, obviously, but I think I saw Wes Bowen quote tweet it and said, "Dang, did Deshaun rub somebody the wrong way?" that deserves a chuckle at the very least. So interesting. I wouldn't put it past the Eagles to take but I know Deshaun is a close friend of Jalen's. I remember when Jalen said on the interview that he still sees Deshaun and all this stuff, and everybody was trying to drag Jalen for it. Like, if you think these guys, these athletes, these star athletes aren't going to be friends with star athletes, I don't know what to tell you. So that's another interesting tidbit there. Any final notes on anything defensively? We talked about Ricks and Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Sidney Brown. Anything else before we go to break and then talk about some of the offense?
Nope, I think that's it for the defense for me.
No Ajomo. Was there any Ajomo tape out there?
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
I mean, he played a lot, but I didn't notice him.
Yeah, I didn't notice him. Didn't notice him either. We also, the attention span kind of wanes as the game goes on, and Ian Book is taking 21-yard sacks. So wouldn't shock us if we're missing things on that. And we're going to go to a quick break here. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the offense, DeAndre Swift, Tanner McKee, some depth chart notes as well. But keep it locked here on BGN Radio. This is the EPA Podcast.
And we are back here on the EPA Podcast. Just broke down the Eagles' defensive performance from the Week 1 loss to the Ravens. Victor, let's turn the page over and talk about the offense. And I feel like we have to start with DeAndre Swift, who has 2 carries for 24 yards, including the 22-yard run, and then the Eagles pulled him out of the game. And Kenny Gainwell obviously didn't play. They said he's going to play this week. I have this picture in my head of the Eagles being like, Kenny Gainwell's our RB1. We're not going to play him in the preseason. And then they saw DeAndre Swift make one run, and now they're reevaluating that. So what did you make of DeAndre Swift's performance and how the Eagles are kind of handling the running backs in the preseason?
Well, I'll tell you this: the number 0 jersey with the visor is a clean look, and I'm kind of not sick, I guess, but like the number 0 jersey was handed to somebody who might potentially only be here for a season, but it's a clean look, and Swift looked good in it, and he looked good juking somebody in the backfield, in addition to running somebody over to gain an additional 5 to 6 yards. And Swift isn't really known to be like the kind of power running to put dudes on the ground, but he can do it as we all saw. But he's more known for his agility, and we didn't see him catch any passes that I can recall. I don't see him here in the box score as far as catching any passes. But that agility and that elusiveness was on display, making that first guy miss in the backfield. It makes you excited for what this offense can do, and the threat of Marcus Mariota, who we had to watch in this game, but the threat of him running the ball definitely played into it, and we can only imagine how Swift is going to look with the threat of Jalen Hurts in there, who's a more dynamic runner than Marcus Mariota. I think they're going to. We already know they're going to use him all over the place in the slot outside. Intrigued to see how the situation is going to work out. When they came out with the depth chart, we mentioned this on the show prior, that they had all 5 running backs, including Chase Sermon, all 5 running backs in the RB1 slot on the depth chart. Gainwell, Rashad Penny, DeAndre Swift, Boston Scott, and Trey Sermon. And then all the way, 2 spots empty, and all the way at running back 4 was Kennedy Brooks, who I believe fumbled in that game. So certainly not helping his case if he wants to stay in Philadelphia. But yeah, there's a lot of smoke coming out of training camp that Kenny Gainwell is kind of RB1, is kind of leading the charge there. But like we said, I think that DeAndre Swift carry might change the Eagles' outlook on that.
And what do you think about Rashad Penny? Like, how's this backfield going to work? Like, I think the Eagles have 3 guys that I think they're comfortable with Boston Scott, but I feel like he's clearly the 4th guy. But with Gainwell, Penny, and Swift, like, let's assume they're all fully healthy. How do you think that carry breakdown works?
Yeah, I think I still like to believe that Rashad Penny is going to lead the team in carries at the end of the year. He had 9 in this game, which is shocking. You would think they'd want to be kind of tentative with throwing Rashad Penny out there, but he had 9 carries for 34 yards in this game. I like to believe that Rashad Penny is going to be the one getting carries at the end of games, wearing defenses down, letting that clock run down, especially if the Eagles are going to jump out into big leads, which I assume they will do at least through the first part of the season before they go on that death march later on. So if Rashad Penny is going to be the one getting those carries at the end of games, I assume he's going to be leading the carries. But Gainwell, a lot of people are saying don't sleep on Gainwell just kind of being the, I don't want to say every down back, but he could be the guy on first and second downs. And when you have passing downs, we mentioned this on the last show, you don't want it to get to a point where you see DeAndre Swift, they're passing the ball. You see Rashad Penny, they're running the ball. You definitely want to be more cognizant of the plays you're calling. But I think Rashad Penny certainly is probably going to lead this team in carries at the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like, kind of like you said, Rashad Penny is going to be like your primary running back. Not that DeAndre Swift's not going to get plenty of carries, but I think DeAndre Swift's role is more of like your third down back, your pass catcher. And then I feel like Kenny Gainwell is more of like your tempo 2-minute drill sort of running back. So although they did like to give Gainwell a lot of opportunities at the goal line last year. So we'll see if they continue doing that.
Yeah, he snuck in a lot last year. He was stealing, and I'm trying to advise all of you sports bettors out there, do not bet on any Eagles anytime touchdown scores, because you never know who's getting that ball at the goal line. Could be Hurts, Gainwell, Rashad Penny, Swift. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure you can bet on Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown score.
Yeah, Do you think they ease up on that though with the contract, or no? You're still going to use him at the goal line, probably. Right?
Yeah, I think they're going to use him at the goal line,
especially since they didn't change the rule at all.
My co-host on Chalk Talk says that's the best bet in sports is Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown scorer.
Yeah, me and my I work for Bet365, a sports book here in New Jersey, and we all make the joke that I don't know if you know who Erling Haaland is, but he's the Manchester City player whose anytime goal score is literally like minus 200 every single game, and we say Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown and Erling Haaland anytime goal score are two of the most sure bets in sports. So it's funny that you mentioned that.
All right. Well, let's talk about the quarterbacks a little bit here. So obviously we didn't see Jalen Hurts in this game, nor should we see Jalen Hurts, hopefully, for any of the preseason. But the game opened with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. We saw Mariota a little bit. We saw him run a little, throw a little. Then they went to Tanner McKee and finally Ian Book at the end of the game. And we said earlier Ian Book had 11 dropbacks and only threw 1 pass. I think we can just not talk about him. But the Tanner McKee hype train, it's out of control, Victor. It's crazy to me that you have 2 quarterbacks in this game, and one of them completed 64% of his passes, and one completed 50% of his passes. And everybody thinks the guy that completed 50% of his passes against the third string defense should be QB2 now. So not to knock McKee's performance at all. I think he actually played better than his box score line indicates. One of my favorite throws of his, it was a post route that he got to, but he throws the ball. Like I said, I started to clip up stuff for an all 22 and then decided not to. But there's one
so
where
what am I doing here?
there's one where he throws a post route, splits the safety, and he throws it before the window's open. And that's anticipation you don't normally see from a 6th round rookie in their first preseason game. And so that translates. And so I thought he played really well. Now, obviously, there was no pressure on him. They did a good job. That backup offensive line did a really good job. But I really like Tanner McKee. I do think people need to pump the brakes a little bit on this QB2 stuff. Like Marcus Mariota is the backup quarterback that you want. He can run the ball. He had a big conversion on 3rd down. He's not like a push the ball downfield guy like Jalen Hurts is, but he still completed passes at a high rate. Everybody wanted him in, 2016? Mm-hmm. We got him now. Let's not run him out of town after preseason week 1.
Yeah, I tweeted during the game. I said, "Man, I think Tanner McKee just won the QB3 job tonight," and everybody was in my mention. So QB2. I'm like, I don't think he unseats Mariota there. But yeah, Tanner McKee looked more like Nick Foles out there. I mean, if you ask me, he's stay in the pocket, strong guy, delivering tight throws. I think one of his best passes was the one that was negated. The one to Joseph Nada. That was a very good pass. That got negated by the penalty. But I like what he could do, and it's kind of nullifying my. Or it's kind of easing my pain for the DTR thing. And the only reason I'm such a big Dorian Thompson-Robinson fan is because when I was doing work with PFF last year, I had to break down every single play of every single UCLA game. So I had to watch this guy pretty much every single game. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I became a fan by default because I watched him so much, and now he's killing it in preseason. He was my ideal kind of long-term backup plan for the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, the Eagles opted to draft Ringo, and we couldn't get him. But I like Tanner McKee. It didn't make sense when we drafted him because you want a guy who's like kind of the similar mold to Jalen Hurts, can at least run a little bit. Tanner McKee attempted to run in this game, got caught from behind, eerily reminiscent of Josh McCown getting caught from behind in that wild card game a few years ago. But you didn't draft him for his mobility. You drafted him as a project that you could potentially flip down the road. And I'm sure some teams will fall in love with him if he develops and becomes a nice pocket passer. But he was very good. His 10 for 20, he definitely played better than his box score showed, as you mentioned. But I liked what I saw. He's strong, stays in the pocket, he makes good throws, he makes good decisions. He would have been a 2nd-round pick like 10 years ago. So it's just the league is moving in a different direction, and it's unfortunate for a guy like McKee. But the kid can play, and I liked what I saw from him.
Yeah, I mentioned that post route that he threw before the window was open. The second most impressive play he had was an incompletion, but down at the goal line on that 4th and goal, the Eagles called their little option play to the flat, the little read option to the flat, and they'd called it earlier in the game and it worked, and this time it was covered up. And that's a one read play. You're reading whether you hand it off or you throw it to the flat, and the key said to pull it, and the flat was covered up. And this is a 6th-round rookie, but it's 4th down, and he recognizes that. He doesn't, take a sack. He didn't panic. He backpedaled and he threw the ball into the end zone. And the ball hit a receiver in the hands, and he was out of bounds, and the guy was really well covered. But, it was impressive to me that in that moment when the one read play and it didn't work, it wasn't there, that A, he didn't throw a pick six out to the flat, and B, he just had the presence of mind to put the ball into the end zone and give a receiver a chance to make an outstanding play. And it didn't work out. It goes as an incompletion, but the processing that he had on that play, I thought was really impressive for a rookie.
Yeah, it was definitely impressive processing time. Some of the throws, like they didn't look like they required much effort. And the NFL always loves the guys who can throw a ball downfield and make it look easy. So I think Tanner McKee has the potential to become QB2 down the road. Certainly not now. They're gonna play Mariota if Jalen Hurts gets hurt, God forbid. So, like you said, pump the brakes on that. Tyree Cleveland was Tanner McKee's favorite target. 5 catches for 68 yards. Looked pretty good there. The receiver, the bottom of the receiver depth chart is a bit interesting because the top guys, A.J. Brown, Devontae, Olamide, Quez, are all going to be here. You assume, I would say Britton Covey. I don't ever like to say lock, but he's like your top punt returner, right? So he's going to be here. That's 5 receivers. I thought Deion Kane had a good shot to stick around, but he's been hurt for the last week or so. So now is it Greg Ward who does what Greg Ward always does in his preseason game? He's reliable. Mariota loves him. Mariota's loved him throughout all of camp. So Greg Ward, no shocker there. Is it Tyree Cleveland, Jaden Hazelwood? Is it any of these other guys? Joseph Nada, who they're high on. Joseph Nada's getting first team reps in camp. How does the bottom of this receiver depth chart shake out? Because there's a lot of guys there who can play. Who do you think makes the cut?
Yeah, Greg Ward is simply too good and too much of a vet to be playing against third stringers in the
Yeah, I don't know why he's out there, but whatever.
But he's not a guy that I want, actually on the 53. So I would like for it to be, Joseph Nada or Tyree Cleveland or one of these younger guys that maybe you got a little bit of upside with. But Greg Ward's, he's kind of Mr. Reliable.
Yeah, you just know what he is. Good to have.
Yeah, I think it'll end up being one of the young guys, but I don't know.
Yeah. Tyree Cleveland showed me. So I wasn't too familiar with Tyree Cleveland. I just remember always reading his name and being like, the Eagles are holding on to this guy for a reason. But he showed some of his catching prowess. Joseph Nada made some tough catches as well, and the Eagles gave him, I think, a significant sum of money as an undrafted guy. So they obviously think highly of him. So yeah. Now I'm not going to say your favorite, but as far as offensive line, there's some good tape on Tyler Steen, the guy you think should be starting on week 1. I don't know if you've seen the tape. I only caught Fran Duffy's breakdown earlier this morning, but Tyler Steen was making some guys move in that game. Any things you noticed along the offensive line? I think Josh Andrews, right, was playing center. Cam Jurgens, did he ever play center at any point?
No,
I don't recall.
Play.
Oh, he didn't play, period. Oh, that's right. None of the starting offensive line.
Yeah, Jurgens didn't play, so he's 100% your starter because they didn't feel a need to play him at all.
Are you upset about that?
Nah, Steen. I thought Steen looked good. They started him at left tackle. They later played him at right guard, so he could potentially be the backup at 2 different positions there. They asked him to do a lot. They left him on an island in pass protection at times at left tackle, and he mirrored well. They had him pulling both from left tackle and right guard. They wanted to see what he could do, and I thought he looked pretty good. So I thought it was a good showing from him. It makes you feel good about the depth on the offensive line, and especially if they have confidence in him to be able to be a backup at 2 spots like that. That would be really big.
Yeah, it would be big for them, especially for guys that lost some key guys. Like Dillard's not there anymore. You're going to be dependent on Jack Driscoll and some other guys if somebody goes down along the offensive line. So that's all notes I had as far as the offense. Anything else you had noticed? I don't think Dan Arnold makes the team now as far as tight ends are concerned. It's Goddard. Yeah, they like Jack Stahl, what he can do in the blocking game. Calcaterra, you figure they hang on to him. Dan Arnold probably doesn't make this team, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And number 46 is a weird number anyway. So.
Yeah, I think it ends up being Calcaterra as your tight end 3. Tyree Jackson.
Yeah, the Tyree Jackson experiment for the 3rd year in a row.
Yeah, 3rd year in a row. We'll see if he can make it through training camp preseason without getting injured, because that's been the issue. He's looked good 2 years in a row and then has gotten hurt at some point in camp. So hopefully, he's able to stay healthy. But yeah, the Eagles are loaded on the offensive line. They're loaded at running back.
Skill positions everywhere.
Yeah, just the depth at receiver, past your first 3 or 4 guys, which is back into the roster. So everybody's got those question marks. It's better to have the question about wide receiver 4 or 5 than it is about wide receiver 2. So Eagles have a really talented roster, and I thought that shone through in the preseason.
Yes, Hurt still should have been in there for the 2-point conversion, but we'll take the loss. Enjoy your streak, Harbaugh, one of the most ridiculous streaks in all of sports. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode of the EPA Podcast, brought to you by Bleeding Green Nation. Be sure to stay subscribed to the BGN radio feed so you don't miss any of the shows that they have coming through here. NFC's Mixtape. Shane, you have another show on this feed? I don't recall. I ask you this every episode. Is there another show you do here or no?
Yes, it actually might be in the feed by the time this one drops in, or it might not. But we're doing a BGN draft show throughout the year this year. So
a draft show in August? Is this what we're doing?
Yep.
What are we doing? What are we looking at?
So if you guys enjoyed our draft content, leading up to the draft, we're going to be dropping weekly short episodes, like 15 to 20 minutes, where we're just going to recap like a couple of the big performances or matchups from the week before in college football and look ahead to a couple big matchups for the weekend. So Dibes and Mark are going to be joining me, the guys that did the draft show with us last year. You'll still get the full episodes in the off season, but throughout the year, we're just going to put some names on your radar of guys you can watch if you're channel surfing on Saturdays. So
Marvin Harrison Jr.
We have Yeah, he's not going to be there for the Eagles. He's going to be an Arizona Cardinal with their number 1 and number 2 picks.
Yep, and Kyler Murray is going to be in Atlanta. That's
Yeah,
my hot take. Kyler Murray is a Falcon next year because Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr. will be there. Oh, that reminds me. Real quick before we leave, my take on QB3 before Tanner McKee became a thing. What I wanted the Eagles to do is to trade for Malik Willis. Is what I wanted. I was like, Malik Willis is out of there. They got Will Levis. They obviously are out on Malik Willis. I think the Eagles should make a move, throw them a 7-6 round pick, whatever. Get Malik Willis in here, who can be the long-term mobile, guy behind Jalen Hurts and Marcus Mariota. I was about it. Then we drafted Tanner McKee, and I was like, the hell are we doing? But I like Malik Willis. I mean, playing at Liberty doesn't mean anything, but I liked him. I feel like he could have been a long-term project here.
I would trade Tanner McKee for Malik Willis straight up.
Straight up. The Titans came right now and said, we want Tanner McKee. We'll give you Malik Willis. Done deal.
I'd
do it too.
It works for both teams. Tanner McKee is like your perfect Ryan Fitzpatrick backup, or Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Tannehill. He's like Ryan Tannehill. Big, takes hits. It's fine.
Yep. Stays in the pocket. Doesn't run. Hell yeah. Yeah. That's it. Yo, we got to pitch this. We got to pitch this. I'll definitely do that straight up.
Willis was my QB1 that year, and I just like his athleticism.
What year? 2 years ago? Well, I mean, the pickings weren't obvious.
Yeah,
over Kenny Pickett. Yeah.
Yeah. Pickett was QB2 for me that year. I love mobility, and maybe I slant too far that way, but the ceiling was really high, and he's got a lot of work to do, but that's why he's an ideal backup. And the Titans don't like him, obviously. The coach Vrabel didn't like him from the beginning, and he's never really going to get that much of a shot there. So I would be all for it. I'd love to have him in the building. QB factory, baby.
Yeah, I thought Malik Willis was going to. I was screaming for weeks upon weeks that he was going number 9 to Seattle. That's what I was saying. I was like, he's going number 9 to Seattle, and then the Seahawks will have their QB, and then Malik Willis goes in like the 3rd round or 4th round, wherever he went. So yeah, that's fun. But yes, thank you guys for listening to the EPA podcast. We'll be back next week if the preseason game is exciting enough, we'll be back next week to talk about whatever it is we'll do. Shane and I will be on the post game after tomorrow to break down what is going on, if anything exciting happens. So be sure to catch that as well. Shane, where can the people find your projects and what you're doing on X/Twitter/ wherever else you're doing work on?
Yeah,
all 22 for the Browns.
Follow me on Twitter and Threads and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. Maybe I'll get some all 22 up on both YouTube, and I clip it up into shorter clips on Twitter. But 220 is the limit, so it's usually like a little clip and then a link to the full video. So
pay Elon.
Go check
out longer videos. Pay him. You got to pay Elon for longer videos.
Yeah, so you can check me out there. I've been doing my top 10 position rankings. I've got a lot of stuff queued up for the regular season. I'll be doing like the in-depth previews and stuff, putting it all out on Twitter, but not doing all that for the preseason because you never know who's going to play. It's hard to do that, but that'll be ready week 1, previewing the Patriots game. So make sure you're subscribed or following or whatever we call it now.
Yeah, do whatever it is just to make sure that you're not missing these. Yes, sir. We'll be back next week. Catch the BGN post-game show tomorrow with Shane and myself and whoever else is going to be on there. Until next week, guys, we'll catch you guys next one. Peace out here from the EPA Podcast.
Go Birds.